matter how long or how short a period of time they learn for.
COVID must have caused a bit of a shake.
Oh, yes, it was not fun. I managed to teach online. It was a whole brand new experience for me.
Yeah, it was a difficult time, but why do you think using music even throughout the COVID space was important?
I think it was very important because even though it wasn't face-to-face, it was still maintaining some degree of regularity, I think, for children particularly. Certainly they had schoolwork to do at home, so there was a little bit of continuity there. But if their piano lesson used to be at 3:30 on Mondays, then that's usually when we did it for COVID. We were flexible, however, because life was very different. But they had some kind of regularity, and I think it was important for them to keep going with some of their regular activities. A lot of them they couldn't do. They couldn't do sport, but they could do music.
And music in itself is something that's uplifting.
And just the communication too with somebody else. Because they were often at home with parents and siblings. I'm sure there were some benefits to that. There would have been some very big difficulties, but there would be some benefits too of that family time being possible that maybe it's not possible at other times. The interaction that I was able to have with the students was good because it was somebody from the outside coming in.
I guess though, if they hadn't have kept going and then dropped music, so that once we're out of COVID, they no longer had their music, there's an impact there from a mental health perspective.
So I'm glad we kept going during that time, really glad. Yeah. It wasn't easy, but we did it.
Yeah. What have you noticed about development in the area of Camden?
The development in what I call the internal part of Camden, it's changed, but not dramatically. The main street is still the main street. There's been some newer developments and so on. And in housing, of course, a lot of the areas that were originally farming areas have been developed into housing areas. I just drove down Macquarie Grove Road the other day. One of the big farming areas down there has just been on Cobbity Road. There's huge work going on there, bound to be many houses in there. So incredible growth as an LGA. I think there's still a sense that there's the people that sometimes grew up in Camden and have lived in Camden itself. We feel, because I'm part of it, we're Camden and some of these other areas, whilst they're part of Camden LGA, they're developing their own services as well. Like they have their own shopping centres, they have their own sporting clubs, all of that. So it's a much more broad base now than it used to be. It's multicultural. When I was teaching at Camden High School first, I think there was perhaps one Chinese family and they owned the market garden in town. And that was about all. That's incredible when I think about it, because we're blessed now with many different races of people. And it's good, I think, that council and many other groups are really embracing that and encouraging it.
You would see right where the church is, the development of is it a retirement space next door?
Yeah.
How does that feel? Because you've known that space as the Camden High.
That's right.
And then you've been there in the church right next door, but now you're seeing development, which is really the most significant development in that little Camden pocket.
It's huge now, getting bigger every day. So yes, it is very different. It's certainly in an ideal position for people that want to walk up the street. It's just ideal. So that's a good thing about it. But yes, the development down there is huge, but of course it won't develop over the other side of the road because it's flood affected. So the farm's always going to be there.
Getting kids to school when you have things like floods and bushfires nowadays.
That's right. There were floods and I lived at Catherinefield for some of those years. There were times before the new bridge was opened we couldn't get to school. So there were a couple of times when I couldn't get there. The other interesting thing was when the cow pasture bridge was damaged and all twisted up and unavailable for a long time, had to go through Cobbity Road and then along Macquarie Road to come in through the back way. So we went that way for a long time.
Yeah, that's quite funny because Cobbitty Bridge was the one that got mostly damaged
That's
recently.
right.
So how was that when your only way into Camden then became quite a large detour?
It was either that or when the new bridge was open, of course, you could go there.
Your husband, Ron, had something to do with the bridge?
He was on council at the time. He was an alderman, and he was, when it was voted, looked at what kind of bridge they would replace and put on over the river there for the cow pasture bridge. I believe, from memory, there was talk about a wooden bridge, and he was saying, no, we have to have something more secure. And so the current bridge construction is as a result of that discussion in council all those years ago.
It's interesting the impact that you can have, even you and he having probably discussions at home about what the bridge should be made of. And
I didn't know what it should be made of, but just the security of having a bridge that was going to last a distance. And it has. It's been hurt and damaged a bit.
So as a prominent figure in Camden, how do you feel about the role of women out there at the moment in the local area?
I think it's important that women give of their giftings, whatever that means. It may mean that they're a professional person working part-time. They may have been a professional person and they may now be at home raising their children, and that is just as important. And they are contributing to the life of the community greatly. The mums at home are contributing everything that they've got, not only to their family but to their community, because those children are going to be in the community. And a lot of them give voluntarily to school committees and so on. So I believe that's very important. But I believe also that if a woman has a particular skill set or a particular gifting, a particular passion to be in the workforce, that it is doable with help if you have a family. Then you come into that next season of life where your family's grown up. Women with skill sets and giftings can contribute in many ways to the community, and I think equally as important as what men contribute. A lot of men give voluntarily in sporting scenes. For example, my husband watered the turf on the cricket pitch and coached cricket and all of that. And a lot of guys, professional or otherwise, give a lot to sporting, and women can do the same thing, and they should be respected and encouraged to give their skill set, whatever it is, and whether it be in charity situations or in the workforce. And as they said at the Order of Australia medal service, the professional people that were awarded that medal, they didn't just do their job. They always contributed that something extra into the life of their community, whatever that might have been, doing their job with a passion. And I believe women and men both can do that.
Any events or milestones over the many years that you've been part of the community that come to mind that is something that's dear to your heart?
I think the development of the Civic Centre was a very important building and facility. But prior to that, there was nothing really, no hall, a couple of church halls. But that Civic Centre was such an amazing addition. It created a lot of opportunities for local groups and for visiting groups to come and perform. It was where we actually moved our primary school mass choir carols festival to there. We used to do it, first of all, in Camden High School hall, and then Elderslie High School hall. Then we moved it to the Civic Centre, partly because it was air-conditioned, but also had more space. But really having done it at Elderslie in the heat. So it was a carols festival which was run to benefit what was then called the Spastic Council, and the money raised all went to that. And it was a primary school mass choir. So the Civic Centre has been and is being used even more now for various things, and hopefully will be more and more attainable for people to use it in the future as it's developed more for groups. The various opportunities there have been for Light Up Camden, those kind of things that have been a community bringing together of people, I think is very important, because you can't have real community without connection. And sure, Light Up Camden, people don't know each other very much, but they feel connected because they're part of the town, part of the community. And I think that's important. And then the many groups that are within Camden, and I'm not just talking about the Main Street area of Camden, but the various community groups right across the whole LGA are really important. There's lots of women's groups, there's lots of groups for men, according to people's interests. There's sporting clubs, there's music groups, there's community bands, and that's important because connection is important.
What would you say to your 18-year-old self by way of advice? Now, obviously, you weren't married at that point.
No, I was not.
What would you say to her, knowing what you know now?
I think I'd say go for any opportunity that you're given if it's in line with your passion and your skill set. There are sometimes opportunities that come across your way and you think, oh, that'd be good, but is it the right thing for me at this time? So I'm very aware of that. There's a time and a place. There's a right time for things, and what might have been right as a 20-year-old and say I was offered the same thing as a 35-year-old probably would not have been right. So I think it's important to have that sense of, is this the right time? Is this the right thing for me to be doing right now?
Okay. So to just question yourself before you jump into things, but also take the opportunity if it's there.
Yes, and to make sure it's in line with your passion and what you want to do. People say to me now, why on earth are you still teaching? I'm 83. Like, why are you still doing this?
And why?
Partly because I love it, generally, nearly all the time, 99% of the time. It's connection with families, it's connection with the children, it's teaching them to do something that I've been taught to do. So I'm passing on something to them, a skill that they may carry on to great heights, they may not, but they're learning something. So I think that's why I do it. And I love the interaction, I love the kids, and I like to get to know their parents. And I think that's a very connection thing again. It's very good for me because I live on my own and I want to be mixing with people of all ages. And that's important, I believe.
That wraps up our very first episode of the Women of Camden podcast. A big thank you to Heather Bieman for being with us and sharing her story. Heather Bieman, Order of Australia Medal recipient, champion for the arts in Camden, educator and mother. The Women of Camden podcast is supported by Camden Council and has been imagined for the promotion of International Women's Day.